Hi guys, Centurion here, and today we're going to be talking about the lore or the possibility of the story behind Daisy, and well, we're going to have to go back a fair bit towards the start of Arma 2 and what happened there. However, strap in because, well, it's going to get very mind-numbing, to say the least, because there is a lot working into it. And this is coming from my 2 to 3 weeks looking into it, so a better part of half a month. And well, I want to make sure that everything is covered within the story of Daisy. However, this is just a working theory. This is what I put together from playing it and what Bohemia has released in terms of the the backing story with the in the past few updates with the introduction of the Yellow King and so on. So let's go back all the way to Arma 2 and from how that started and how it may have affected the start of Daisy's lore. In 2009, Arma 2 had released to the Steam stores. It was a revolutionary game, and with that came, obviously, a lot of mods. However, before we get into the modding side, which was soon to release Daisy, we need to understand the lore behind Arma 2 as well. In Solnichi Mining Company in 2007, a man by the name of Gregory Lopetev would create what is known as the Working Man's Defense Alliance. Pretty much a, what you'll find as a union. And they would go ahead and cause strikes as they didn't agree with how Chernarus would be run in the modern day, as it would be no longer a part of the Russian Federation. So, he took it into his own hands, and in 2009 he would create the Chedaki Forces, or the Chernarus Movement of the Red Star. So, you may have heard of that, and obviously you can find the flags in the actual standalone game of Dayz, and obviously the old one itself. However, the one thing you may not have realised is how it started. In 2009, they will go ahead and do what is known as the September attacks, and that would be the cause of the civil war in what is now Chernarus. And so spanned from there, which caused a civil war between the Chernarus Defense Forces, the Russian Federation, the United States Marine Corps and its NATO-backed forces, as well as Chedaki militia. As well as that, they would go ahead and kidnap the current Prime Minister of Chernarus by the name of Alexander Baranov, which you can find on the advertisements around the map. Since the release of Arma 2 and obviously the Daisy Standalone, we have only seen very little of what we can consider the history of the game. And since the acquisition of Daisy from Dean Hall, the New Zealand game designer behind it, in the 2013-14 area, we haven't exactly had much. We started off with what we would call Hannah's story, and as well all the trailers for each update post 1.13. So, when I first started playing Daisy back around 1.08 fully, I took great interest with the trailers because I found them pretty fucking cool. And once 1.14 came out, which gave us the gas and how the gas started and where the static zones are, I took great interest. So here's the 1.14 story, and we're gonna go through it together.
Peggy 18. know you're there. I know you can hear me. My story is ending, but yours must continue. Uncivilization has beaten me, and bled. You know the rest. Today, the forecast has changed for a small hope of salvation. I finally rest, and we watch the sunrise on a grateful universe. The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Смерть.
Throughout the 114 trailer, you could hear something of like a buzz, and that was coming through the radio transmitted by the person who was telling us about his story and how his life is coming to an end. And I didn't realise until after, but the buzzing sounded very similar to what we can call the UVV-76, which I spoke about in my 114 video, and that was a Russian broadcast station owned by the Russian military, and it sounded obviously like a buzz. So when I first saw it in the actual map, I knew something was obviously strangely suspicious, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the lore and how 114 here, how it affected what we now know as the lore. So, in Chernarus there are two gas zones, one in Pavlova military and one in Rifi. So, what if Rifi, and the ship in Rifi, is the one that brought the gas to us, and the man who's in the 114 update, the one who said his life is coming to an end, may have been influenced what we know as the lore itself. So, my working theory is that when the ship crashed in Rifi, this ship held what we know as the POX, and that is the gas that you can find, and obviously now post 118 you can actually start shooting it and throwing it at people. So if you don't know what a POX is, it's basically a gas that once you have it in a proximity and you don't have the equipment for it, which is a gas suit and mask, a chemical suit, you will begin to bleed, and very similar to what is considered a bioweapon. So my theory is that this came on Rifi, which was one of the first causes of the outbreak of the virus, which obviously created the undead. And from there, it spread, and obviously because it's a post-Civil War, they wasn't exactly prepared for what was to come. So, you may be wondering, how does this exactly affect the lore? Well, when it comes to the obviously the story of Dayz 114, the gas is obviously in two locations, as I previously explained, Rifi and Pavlovo. So this is what I believe happened. Once the scientists found out what was inside the ship that crashed, and the ship, by the way, is indeed Russian, I believe what happened is that the Chernarus Russian movement on the Red Star took as an advantage to get what they want, and that was to obviously have Russia a part of the, well, Chernarus as part of the Russian Federation once more. and so they attacked Pavlovo military base, which was home to NATO and the Chernobyl Defense Force, and that's in obviously the Arma 2 lower. So, after they used that as a chemical weapon to destroy it, they didn't know what power it held, and obviously the power it held was that it was to create the undead, i.e. the infected. So, from there, obviously, everything had hit the fan. People obviously was turning, people were dying, and which would include the mass graves that you can find around the map. And with these mass graves obviously comes mass evacuation because of how bad the situation turned. And so around the map you can find multiple evacuation sites on main service roads. For example, West Evac by Corona Castle. There is multiple up north by Tissy and Kamensk, as well as many going towards coastal routes such as freight ships and dockyards. So you get one in Chernogorsk, by Zeleno, by Svetolyarsk towards Rifi, as well as others such as the southwest, which was going to the main area of South Segovia, and other places. From there, and obviously comes back to mass evacuation, there would be need intervention of other countries and obviously worldwide help. And so Northwest Airfield and Kamensk Airfield was used as the main routes in and out of the country for foreign evacuation. With Kamensk, you can find the military tents and the chemical tents, which may have been used to treat the infected, obviously not going so well. With that comes international aid in to find the antidote for the POX, coming the POX antidote. Furthermore, people would want to evacuate, and so with that came mass evacuation by ship and mass evacuation by car. So by doing so came a lot of obviously traffic and also traffic jams, which will explain how many cars are piled up at each evacuation site. People causing mass panic, and so obviously would be careless and not following traffic laws when overwhelmed by infected and trying to get the fuck out of there. I think everyone would do that, to be honest with you. Coming worldwide aid, you would now find a lot of soldiers going into the country to try and fend off the attacks and waves of the undead, and that explains why there are marine zombies, there are obviously Chernobyl Defense Force zombies, as well as others such as Chidaki forces and so on. And this would explain why there's so many destroyed military vehicles, and considering this is taking place 2 to 3 years post of what we would know as Arma 2, I think a lot of the destroyed vehicles would have been cleaned up and used for scrap since then. And obviously, if you go back towards where we know as Krasnostav Airfield, I think a lot of the tents would have been cleaned up as well if something like this hadn't happened and the waves of undead hadn't overwhelmed the ground forces used by NATO and the Chernobyl Defense Forces and so on. If we go to Northwest Airfield, you would find a destroyed AC-130 that was unfortunately hit the ground and burned, obviously post of what we know as Arma 2, as that would have been cleaned up, as it would cause a hazard if you're going to take off if it wasn't, and obviously if everything was normal. Arma 2 obviously is based in 2009, and if considering Dayz was developed 2013-2014, and with looking that's where it is set, which was 4 years post the Civil War, most of the scrap and most of the destroyed buildings would have cleared up. However, this may not have seemed as likely as we think. If you go west of Steroy and east of Goglovo, there is a destroyed town, which obviously once was a thriving civilization called Kumrania, and that is obviously blown to shit. And if you want to go check it yourself, I'll post a little picture now where you can find it on screen. However, it's nothing much you can actually see there, it's just a few destroyed buildings and a destroyed church. However, this was obviously destroyed what seemed to be by an artillery strike, as obviously most of the destroyed buildings and destroyed parts would be the rooftops and the sides of the building, and not exactly much from the inside. So, what do you think happened? I personally think, obviously, as explained there, but I also think it spanned from how devastating the Civil War had been. The Civil War itself was a loss for the Chedaki forces, and so the Russians being anticipating to gather new land, obviously lost this, and so decided they will go ahead and do an artillery strike, destroying what we know as Chernarus. I believe it didn't go as well as planned for them, and also they took the brink of the hit as well, spanning all the way up to Poland and Czechoslovakia area, what we know as Livonia. And so from there, it spanned. Most of the world had been taken over at this point, and obviously with that comes more mods, so Dayz, etc. Dayz is based in Maine, and so from there it all happened. I'm not going to include mods in this lore because obviously this is nothing included in it, but Livonia is close and in Europe and obviously will be included. From there, everything hit the fan, people decided to become bandits, and this is where we see the introduction of the Yellow King. The Yellow King is in Livonia. You can find the helmet in Livonia by the new castle, but was added in 114. And so, I believe this Yellow King is what we consider a bandit, and obviously why people become bandits. They wanted to find the best, and they wanted to thrive in what was known as a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and so he became the most notorious bandit that can obviously be found in Chernarus, Livonia. I believe what we know as the Yellow King is something primarily focused on Livonia, as that's where he's from, and so from there we can definitely assume the man obviously known as Yellow King is one of the bandits from Livonia and is primarily staying there. However, this does not disregard how intricate Dayz has become and Bohemia itself to make Livonia stand out for the rest of us. They also too have the gas zones, and so I can safely assume the person who is responsible for these would be the Yellow King. And the reason I think this is that in the most recent Twitter update, Dayz or Bohemia itself put an image of the Yellow King and also a bunker. The bunker itself is what I believe to be coming in Dayz 119, as they put in the community post something of a secret. Obviously, bunkers are secrets, but this doesn't disregard the Yellow King. I think the Yellow King is one of the most major parts of the update, and obviously part of the lore. So, this is as far as we've managed to get for the lore. From Arma 2 all the way to the end of Dayz in 2022, as we know now. And from a civil war turned bad, to a shipwreck carrying a Russian-made antigen, to bandits trying to use it to take over and defend and thrive in the land that we know as Chernarus. So, the question is, what do you think of what becomes of the lore, and do you think I'm right in assuming this is what may be the lore that we may encounter in the future, or do you think it's something else? If you'd like to, I'm always ears, and I'll always read something someone puts in the comment section, and put what you think happens and why the lore is how it is. My name is Centurion, and thank you for watching.